G'day everybody, welcome to Faith, Culture, Politics in Australia with Mark, and as you can see in the title, I'm going to be talking about why I changed my mind about attending the March for Australia. So it'll be a little bit of ground covered, but hopefully it won't be too long. But as always, if you do like what you see, resonates with you, hit the likes, follow or subscribe buttons, and also if you feel so inclined, jump onto the Buy Me a Coffee and support independent media that way as well. So look, we'll just jump into it, and I'll unpack as we go in regards to my thoughts around why I've changed my mind about attending on the 31st. So we'll just go through it. So look, over a week ago, I had comments on March for Australia. I talked about my concerns in regards to it. There was a lot happening, a lot of noise around media in regards to it. So I had some comments on that, and as part of those comments, I also wrote back to someone in regard saying that I won't attend, and I was not because I don't love this country, but I was trusting my gut, which has not let me down over the last 5 years, which I still believe in. But I guess with the fullness of time and lots of things coming out, I have changed that. And as I go through this presentation, you'll understand why. Hopefully, understand the reasoning. The other thing, obviously, is I still stand by doing things in our local community, at our local council level, through my places, through your local action groups, and all that sort of stuff. Because things don't stop after the 31st of August. So we need to continue doing what we can. So, but anyway. One of the other reasons I kind of was hesitant was I felt it was very reactionary. Obviously, people saw the images coming out of Sydney for the Free Palestine March and so forth. The Harbour Bridge being allowed to be used for that event. So it was the March for Australia was what I've seen was very reactionary as well, but also because it had involvement or perceived in the early days from the National Socialist Network, which I don't support the view, and I have spoken into that on other podcasts. I just don't support it, but they find to hold the views that they have. I just won't rally behind it, and I've spoken into that. The other side of it was obviously there was a bit of banter around British Celtic supremacy over people that might have migrated here a long time ago that didn't have British Celtic heritage, was still not deemed as Australian enough, and I took to heart and responded to that as well. So I don't support that, and I spoke into that at length as well. So, but anyway, since then, I did catch up with a good friend, and someone I have a lot of time for, Mark Aldridge, and found out that he was involved in the organising of the Adelaide March for Australia, which I was really pleased because I've got a lot of time for Mark. He's well known in the Adelaide region, and you can check out that interview there to get a bit more detail on that. But again, I was very pleased to see that Mark was putting his his weight behind the march and the views on it, and we talked heavily into the migration aspect of that, which we unpacked quite a bit. And just to tie into that a bit, the national net overseas migration has exceeded the Albanese government's stated forecasts in federal budgets. For example, 22-23, approximately 315,000 were forecast, but 528 to 538 were actual. So it exceeded by 200,000. 23-24 exceeded by 51,000, and 24-25 the forecast is 26, but many people believe it's going to blow that out as well. but they reckon declining. So it'll be interesting to see when those actual numbers are out. But cumulative net overseas migration 22 to 25 was estimated around 350,000 above the government's initial forecast, and they were going to pull back on migration. Was election promises and stuff like that. And temporary migration is also impacting that as well. So the government has focused on reforming, they say, a migration system to return to sustainable levels. So clearly people accept that it's not sustainable, including permanent migration program capped at 190,000, 23-24, but net overseas migration, which includes temporary movements, has proven harder to control precisely due to factors like extended stays by existing visa holders. So, and as you will see, I'm just going to play you a quick clip as well. This should talk into it a little bit more as well, and then we'll move on. But I'm just going to play this for you real quickly as well.
I'm a registered migration agent, and I'm going to talk about how the student visa scams work here in Australia. I'm doing this because I'm ashamed of what's happening within my industry, and I won't sell out my country. I'm going to talk about things that are happening that you suspect, but don't want to say out loud because you don't want to come across as racist. This is how it works. Educational institutions receive $29 billion in international tuition fees, which helps keep them financially very well off. In order to make more money, they need more international students. So they lobbied the Australian Labor Party to do so, who increased international student caps. These students often come from poorer nations, who then are allowed to work in Australia for up to 48 hours. Nothing wrong with that. However, at the same time, they continue to work often cash in hand in other low-skilled jobs. The influx of low-skilled workers working cash in hand reduce productivity and drive down wages. Now, I'm not alone in noticing that uncontrolled migration numbers contribute significantly to the housing crisis and the cost of living crisis. Anyone who says that they're only students on temporary visas ignores the fact that these student visas will allow them to work towards permanent residency under subclass 457 and 186 or similar pathways. The increase in the number of people in Australia means we need more healthcare workers and other skilled workers to provide a service to these new people. In order to get these new people, Australia then has an agreement with countries like India where there's a mutual recognition of qualifications such as university degrees. However, in third world nations, you can actually buy university degrees to get into Australia, and I've seen people try this a lot with me. While there are systems in place to do checks and balances on international qualifications, these can be circumvented. These people then come to us, Australia, to fulfill the new roles that we desperately need because we've had mass migration occur and the cycle perpetuates. I didn't mention something. The educational institutions, a significant number of them have found to be fraudulent and just a means for people to come here and work in low-skilled labor jobs illegally or cash in hand, and they don't even show up to school. The migration agents? Well, migration agents get offered significant incentives for bringing students into these fraudulent schools. I know this because as a migration agent, I've been offered up to 50% of the first year student fees, when student fees can be up to $25,000 a year, just to bring students into educational institutions when the students won't even be studying anyway. When they approach me, I tell them where to go. Similarly, health insurance companies have approached me and offered me 20-25% of the cost or the value of the healthcare product if I were to sell that healthcare product to international students, and I tell them where to go. So in other words, we have a system where dodgy private schools and sometimes established educational institutions are paying migration agents to bring in students to not attend the schools, work illegally in low-skilled jobs, and this increased number of people in Australia is justification to bring in skilled migrants to fill the roles we need to serve the number of low-skilled workers. Anyone saying this is racist or bigoted or white privilege, etc., well, you're just not seeing the point of why people are going to protest. The Labor government says they're going to address this, but the whole system really needs a major overhaul. Stay tuned for part 2. We're going to go into more detail about how the educational institutions actually work.
So you can follow that along on, that's a TikTok for visas to Australia. So you can check that out if people want to follow that along a bit further. But getting back into that, so that's, obviously it talked into the migrations thing and the visa things that I talked about there in that last slide. And so that's obviously a valid reason for people to get out on the 31st of March is to talk about the, not on the 31st of March, sorry, the 31st of August for the March. And that's definitely enough reason, obviously, for people to go and talk into that topic. But I believe there's a lot more, and that's why I've changed my mind for myself. So why am I attending the march on the 31st? Well, let's have a look. We'll start going through it then. And one of those is here in South Australia, and I've just talked about it. I've just done a Substack on it, talked into a video. It's a farmers briefing, which was put together by one of the coordinators for the My Places, and it's in regards to the Emergency Management Miscellaneous Amendment Bill 2024, South Australia. So, look, this is just another reason why I think South Australians, in particular for the Adelaide March, should consider going, because there's lots of reasons. And if you have a look, there was a letter put together by someone. So this is not my work, but a letter put together for approaching your members of parliament in regards to that, and I'll put some links in to some sites where I've seen that, where I've seen the Google sites and that as well. So, but if you have a quick look at that, you can see Section 25, General Powers. So specifically, we're going to be talking to Section 25, General Powers, which now allows authorised officers to override state laws, enter homes, seize property and direct medical procedures, even when no emergency exists. The creation of a state of alert, Section 21A, which grants extreme powers based on more suspicion of a potential emergency, allowing government control before any real threat emerges. The ability to require private information and documents, which is Section 24B, even if it incriminates the individual in violation of traditional legal safeguards. The override of freedom of information laws, stripping citizens of their rights, know how and why these powers are being used, the ability to suspend or modify electoral and judicial procedures during a declared disaster, including altering the Electoral Act without permanent parliamentary debate, Section 26AB. So look, it's quite concerning, these laws. So, and Jennifer, Sarah Gaines has been talking into this quite a bit here in South Australia. So definitely worth. It's one of those things that that is quite concerning. So that's one of the things that I'll be attending to on 31st of August because of this. So encourage people that if it's not just migration, if migration doesn't drag you out to the march on the 31st, well, that's enough reason there for you. And obviously there was an article here I wanted to talk into, which talks into another reason why I believe in the overreach and what's happening, and why everything's happening, is this article put together by Alison Beveridge. It's from Letters from Australia. And I'm just going to read a little bit about this. Globalist won the election and they are coming for your house. You will own nothing because institutional investors will force you off your land and into their build-to-rent towers. So importing 13.5 million people to create the next 40 years of housing crisis. The winners will be corporations, banks, developers, institutional funds and billionaires. Losers will be you. Taxes to force homeowners out, green materials push up prices, build to rent towers for permanent renters subsidised by you. Demonisation of private property, selfish homeowners has begun. So this kickback on selfish homeowners. And land titles officers privatised, certificates of titles destroyed, managed retreat or climigration, as the World Economic Forum likes to put it as well, insurance levies kettle you into cities. And just reading on a little bit, Australians love houses. They are a savings fortress against inflation, security to leave our children, if any, or to sell and pay for nursing home later if needed. The highest ambition for most is to have an investment property for income in retirement. If you own a house, the government and the corporations can't push you around, but the globalists want to destroy this. And then just reading up this, a horrified New South Wales Senator Andrew Bragg produced a dissenting report from the Senate Economic Committee recommending Parliament vote against the bill, saying it pandered to investment fund managers. The scheme would promote a rent forever approach where corporations take over the Australian dream. In this nirvana for vested interest, BlackRock, Vanguard and Cbus will own Australia's houses instead of the people, he said. The bill passed anyway with support from the Teals, and there's a link to how they voted in that Substack. This is detailed examination of exactly who is doing this to us, why, and how they are doing it. It's too long for emails, so see Substack for full information. And why I recommend it's worth checking out, it is a very detailed Substack put together over a long period of time by Alison Beveridge. And she's broken it down into 11 parts, and they are creating a fake crisis to rob the public purse, deliberately pushing up prices with migration. You can't escape to the regions because of managed retreat or climigration. Kate Mason talks about that as well a fair bit. Who wants a permanent crisis and built to rent? Who created this housing crisis? Taxes for you, but not for them. More taxes to force you out of your home, pricing you out with building costs, backed by the Teals, a party of the globalists, non-profits, think tanks and universities, culturally destroying private property and year zero. So they're all the topics, and I highly recommend checking out that Substack. So it is one of the other reasons that I'm looking to attend, because I'm pushing back on this whole agenda. And after reading that article, which you reminded of me of just recently, after I shared a video about the someone else talking into the migration issue as well. So that's one of the reasons. One of the other reasons I'm going to look at attending the Adelaide rally is I've caught up with Matilda Borden a lot, and I interviewed Ammon Luca, and it was a silent killing field, a loving son's plea for changes to SACAT and the Office of the Public Advocacy in South Australia after the death of his mother in state care. And it also talks about guardianship laws and that as well. So it's worthwhile, if you want to find out a bit more about that, you can check out that interview on my Substack as well. But Matilda does some amazing advocacy around Australia and raising concerns, and I've heard this a lot with some conversations with some elderly recently about homes, the guardianship, looking at getting selling off their homes to get them into under guardianship, and then into aged care facilities. And clearly we know that that's all funded, and that's an industry that's growing, and it's obviously supporting government paid jobs. So there's a lot happening there. So if you're interested in what's happening there around our state, but possibly all around the country, check out some of Matilda Borden's writings in regards to that. So it's very, very concerning stuff going on there. But going on from that, and look, this is a real thing. These people look at it, asset stripping and all that sort of stuff. So there's a lot happening and a lot to be concerned about. But one of the other things is the government sort of love getting hold of the bureaucracy is growing. They love getting hold of other people's money. So people are advocating for retirees and the rich to be further taxed, and taxing retirees into their retirement years. And also a controversial $10 billion push to tax inheritance in Australia as a once-in-a-generation opportunity. So that's been pushed. Now, not all these things that I'm covering in these articles is obviously things that the government's adopted, but I can tell you that they love every opportunity to get their their grubby little hands on your money. This out of First Links, maybe it's time to consider taxing the family home. So this is obviously something that's coming up as well from think tanks and other people and stuff. So that's definitely in the conversations. Family trust tax changes come with huge risks. So that was written up, an article written up in opinions there. And on top of that, we had recent calls for desirable spare bedrooms to be taxed to help fix housing. So look, at the end of the day, whenever there's an opportunity for government to get their hands money on their hands on your money, they will. They're addicted to debt and spending other people's money. So it's the bureaucracy gets so fat, government gets so fat. They look at opportunities to continue to grab more tax. So tax after tax after tax after tax is what they're doing, because they can't curtail or curb their spending. And obviously, can Australia pay off its debt without hurting future generations? So this article as well talked about that in a business think there, and talking about how much debt we're in. So we're looking at $1.2 trillion by the end of 25 financial year, and what else are they saying here? Yep, 35.5% of gross domestic product, according to the Australian government budget paper. So, that gets further out of control. It's all going to be lumped onto children and grandchildren. So, look, there's actually quite a lot to get out and march for Australia on the 31st of August there, isn't it? So, and look, here's some other things. This is a flyer that was put out by Freedom Unites Coast and Country Parades, and Jody Lowe's put that out. And I've showed this list before. Cost of living, mass immigration. We talked about housing crisis, doubled power, doubled rates, climate spending, government debt, tax on tax on tax, which we just talked about, forest destructions, big business profits, Crown land leasing, foreign ownership, globalist agendas, funding foreign wars, endless red tape, constant surveillance, geoengineering, mRNA, injury denials, family court trauma, pedo protection, kiddie litter in toilets, small businesses closing, racist gaslighting, constitutional denial. So there's lots and lots to talk about. So it's not just about, as I've just shown, it's not just about migration. And you can find out more on the Freedom Unites Coast and Country, Freedom Unites Coast and Country Parades Facebook page to see about what they're doing. But look, ultimately for the 31st of August, as I've just showed you, there's so many reasons why people could be choosing to go, not just in our state here in South Australia. There's obviously some of it's linked directly to our state, but all across the country, there's reasons for people to get out there and march, and it is a march against more against the government ineptitude, the way that they're running this country into the ground, and how it's affecting the good people of this nation. So, as I've said in other podcasts, and that this is about all Australians. No matter where you come from, that value, that have a shared value and ethos in this country, and you accept and adopt this country as your own. So there's a lot to go out and march for on the 31st, as I've just shown. It's not just migration. There's so many other things. So if you're in South Australia, or those things resonate with you that I've just gone through, then I encourage you to pick up a flag and get out there as well. So taking a little bit of a sidestep, if people are looking at going, I just wanted to cover a little bit about the anti marches, the protests. So I'm going to talk into that. It's a bit, probably going to ruffle some feathers, but we'll do it anyway, right? So this flyer came out. It's pro-Palestine, anti-racist. So this is a weekly Free Gaza. So this is what I want you to take in mind here, is they do this weekly, and they've got weekly Free Gaza protests, which is fine, and they've got one on the 31st of August, and they've ramped it up a bit because they see this, and a lot of things have changed now. There's been a lot of talks into that since professional groups have taken over the organising of this, and a lot more people are going for many reasons. But ultimately, this is a flyer organised by a few groups down there. There's about 7 groups, and a pro-Palestine anti-fascist march for an Aboriginal and multicultural Australia. Now, I've talked about this before. I'm not big for the whole multicultural. We're multi-ethnic, multi-race, probably, whatever. But we have a culture. We have the Australian culture, and it's been built up. And I've talked into that. I don't need to repeat that again from there. But if you have a look, they're saying that on Sunday, the 31st of August, a March for Australia. So they've mentioned the March for Australia in this flyer. National Rally is calling for an Australia for the white man. Now, this has clearly been pushed back on vehemently, so that's not what this rally is all about. For the white man only, this is a serious attack on Indigenous, Black and Brown people, migrants, refugees and Palestinians. I agree. I agree with that. I don't believe that, and I've pushed back on that whole thing, and I've pushed back on that, and that's why I'm also mentioning this flyer as well. The racist rally will be at the same time on the weekly Free Gaza protest, claiming to take back the streets from the Free Palestine movement. And I don't believe it is what that is. It's not about claiming the streets back. This is a one-time event organised at the moment for the 31st, and you guys do a weekly one, and this is one thing that people are calling for, to get out there to show their unity. It says gather for an anti-fascist mobilisation at the State Library. So look, I'm not saying that this is what's happening in South Australia. I'm not sure what, this is sort of more Melbourne-based, Sydney-based, I believe, and I'm not sure whether South Australia, Adelaide, pro-Palestine anti-fascist movement is getting out to the streets on the 31st here in Adelaide. And obviously, as Mark mentioned in the interview that I had with him, police are fully involved. They're going to be on guard. They're obviously fully aware of this. But look, I wanted to take the opportunity just to have a look, because I wanted to have a little bit of a dig myself to see what all these groups are about. So look, I did do a little bit of a look into the Free Palestine Coalition, which is NAM. There's also the campaign against racism and fascism there, Unionists for Palestine, Communist Anarchist Federation, the SIT Intifada, and Community Defence Marshalling System. And we've also got Victorian Socialists have all put their names on this banner, so they're all looking to get involved. They've all backed it. So, and this is why I wanted to have a bit of a yarn about some of these. I did a bit of digging, going to have a quick overview of these, just so people understand where they're coming from, and so you can do your own research and look into them and whatever. But the Free Palestine Coalition, NAM, is a grassroots Palestinian-led activist group in Melbourne, focused on anti-Zionist organising and solidarity protests, with no evidence of major institutional funding beyond community donations as of mid-2025. Free Palestine Coalition's funding primarily comes from the crowdfunding platforms like Chuffed, supporting protest logistics. Recent campaigns in 2025 emphasised divesting from arms deals, but transparency remains limited. Key involvements include Palestinian organisers, Indigenous allies, unions and socialist groups, building coalitions for actions like weekly rallies and national marches. Controversies involve police responses to protests and accusations of anti-Semitism, though the group highlights inclusive Jewish participation and rejects racism. Activities continue strong in 2025 with events like the August National March for Palestine. Evidence suggests it's a community-driven movement amid broader debates, with supporters praising its advocacy and critics questioning tactics. So that was the Free Palestine Coalition. So we'll have a look at the campaign against racism and fascism. Grassroots nature. So research suggests CALF is a decentralised community-driven coalition primarily funded through small individual donations and crowdfunding with no major corporate or government backing. It involves left-wing activists, including members from socialist organisations like Socialist Alternative and Radical Women, alongside pro-Palestine groups and trade unions. Core activities focused on countering far-right movements through protests. CALF emphasises solidarity against racism, fascism and related issues like refugee rights and Indigenous sovereignty. Controversies. While praised for disrupting neo-Nazi groups, critics view its confrontational tactics as extreme, potentially escalating tensions, evidence leaning towards it being a defensive response to rising far-right activity. Recent developments. As of August 25, CALF continues organising pro-Palestine and anti-fascist marches, such as upcoming events on August 31 against a March for Australia and broader debates on racism in Australia. Having a look at Unionists for Palestine. This group appears to be a decentralised network of rank and file trade union members in Australia, focused on advocating for Palestinian rights, including calls for ceasefire and arms embargoes. It draws inspiration from historical union activism like anti-apartheid efforts and has grown to over 5,000 signatories by 2025. Participants come from various unions such as the Maritime Union of Australia, Australian Services Union, the National Tertiary Education Union. Figures like Erin Madal, MUA delegate, and Kevin Bracken, former MUA secretary, have been prominent in organising rallies and blockades, emphasising solidarity with Palestinian workers amid ongoing conflicts. Funding. Evidence suggests a reliance on voluntary member contributions and indirect union support for events, with no public disclosure of major donors or external funding. This informal structure may contribute to limited transparency though critics highlight broader union investment in arms-related companies as potentially contradictory. Activities and context. The group organises protests, workplace campaigns and educational events, often in collaboration with international bodies like the Palestinian General Federation of Trade Unions. Recent actions in 2025 include national days of protest and responses to Australia's planned recognition of Palestinian statehood at the UN. Controversies. While supporters see it as a justice-driven movement, some viewpoints describe it as influenced by left-wing factions, leading to internal union tensions. The topic remains sensitive, with debates over its impact on Australian labour politics and social cohesion. And looking at the Communist Anarchist Federation, which is another group on that flyer, the ACF isn't a single entity, but a federation of anarchist communist organisations worldwide. They blend anarchism's anti-hierarchy stance with communism's focus on abolishing capitalism via direct action, mutual aid and worker power. Unlike state-backed communism, they reject government entirely. Major groups include the Australian ACF, which was launched in January 2025, active in cities like Melbourne and Brisbane. Britain's Anarchist Federation, founded in 1986 as the ACF, operating across the UK and Ireland. Others like South Africa's Zabalaza, an anarchist communist front rooted in anti-apartheid struggles. These federations emphasise autonomy, drawing from historical texts like the 1926 Organisational Platform of Libertarian Communists. So they're keeping it grassroots, true to anarchist principles. ACF groups are self-funded to avoid outside influence. They rely on members' dues, voluntary donations, sales of literature and merch, and event fundraising. No ties to big donors like George Soros or corporate grants. Searches show they're independent, criticising such funding as tied to capitalism. This keeps them focused on class struggle without co-optation. Involvement is member-driven, with anonymous activists from workers, students and union folk. Membership requires alignment with anti-capitalist, anti-racist ideals, decided through direct democracy. In Australia, groups like the Melbourne Anarchist Communist Group organise strikes, pro-Palestine marches and forums. They've published magazines like Picket Line. In Britain, local branches handle anti-fascist actions, community organising and books like Introduction to Anarchist Communism. part of the International of Anarchist Federations. They collaborate on global solidarity but stay decentralized. Recent activities include counter rallies against mass migration protests and union fights for better pay. It's all about building power from the bottom up, no leaders, just collectives. And the Sit Intifada is founded in November 2023 by a Palestinian activist in Melbourne. It's a pro-Palestine sit-in protest group emphasising non-violent advocacy for Gaza, with daily sit-ins at the Victorian Parliament steps. Key involvement led by a successful businessman and his family, involving Melbourne's Palestinian community, around 20 to 30,000 people. Loose affiliation with groups like Free Palestine Coalition and Unionists for Palestine, but rifts exist on tactics. Funding source primarily community-driven through donations like poster sales, raising about nearly 3,000 for an action fund. No confirmed external institutional funding, though the organiser's business with a $36 million revenue may provide personal support. Controversies allege ties to radical views, but evidence leans towards self-funded activism. Controversies accused by some media of Hamas sympathy and protest escalation, while supporters highlight peaceful solidarity. Evidence suggests divisions in Australia's pro-Palestine movement with no direct government funding links. The group appears less active post-2024, with social media quiet since mid-24. Broader Australian aid to Palestine continues, about $486 million via UNRWA, but not tied to this group apparently. And then we have the Community Defence Marshalling System. It's a community-based marshalling school that trains and deploys volunteers to safeguard rallies, pickets and gatherings, aiming to reduce harm like injuries or arrests during events. Primarily relies on public donations such as a GoFundMe campaign with no signs of government or corporate backing. This fits its anti-capitalist ethos, though details on amounts or usage remain limited. Mostly anonymous volunteers and coordinators. One named individual handles fundraising. Ties seem informal to broader activist networks like pro-Palestine groups, but without official partnerships. Positions itself as anti-colonial, anti-racist and anti-imperialist, emphasising solidarity with Indigenous people and workers' rights. Over recent years, it's reportedly supported hundreds of events, often in decolonisation and labour contexts. As a grassroots effort, it operates independently, but its low profile means information is sparse, and people should just be aware of more funding if you want to go and look into that a bit further. And then we have the Victorian Socialists, which is the Victorian Socialists primarily relies on small individual donations, membership fees and volunteer efforts, with some support from trade unions, no evidence of major corporate or foreign funding. So it's a grassroots funded left-wing party. Key involvement from activists and unions, formed by socialist groups like the Socialist Alternative. VS involves hundreds of members, including unionists, community organisers and candidates focused on workers' rights, housing and Palestine solidarity. National expansion in 2025. Following strong showings in the 25 federal election, VS Victorian Socialist is building chapters across Australia, emphasising anti-capitalist policies. Labelled pseudo-left by some critics for alleged ties to mainstream politics, but supporters see it as a genuine working-class alternative. So that's a bit of an overview there of all those groups that I've. And let me just bring that up there. Just there we go. So I can see you a bit better. So you can see me a bit better. So look. I just provided that overview because that flyer is there. My main thing there is that I've shown since the march was declared for the 31st of March for March for Australia, a lot has changed. A lot of information has changed. So my message is to these groups that have put their name on this flyer counteract the March for Australia and possibly be disruptive. Obviously, you know, we're saying, I'm hearing the organisers for this is that we're not advocating for any violence, any confrontations or anything else like that. But clearly, there's an agenda from the 7 groups just mentioned there in the pro-Palestine anti-fascist flyer that they're looking to agitate and so forth. And I've just showed that there's so many Australians, including myself, I've just demonstrated the reasons why I'm going. If I and I said I've also challenged the National Socialist Network and other things. Right, I've given reasons the reasons that I'm going. So, look, this march, I see it is, you know, it's a march against government. It's against bureaucrats. You know, the ineptitude of bureaucrats and government, right? And also, it's a march against you know, nefarious global actors that want to assert themselves onto our government, right? So there's a lot happening in the world, and that's one of the reasons that I'm choosing to go. It's not about just about the migration. It's not about being racist or anything else like that. And you're obviously taking, you know, you're continuing to believe that this march is pure. Might have started off from very confusing beginnings, and you're continuing to use that. So what I'm saying is that. A call to you, those 7 groups, is a call to you to reconsider disrupting the events of the March for Australia on the 31st. I really, you know, I really encourage you to reconsider that. You're going to have a lot of people that are going, and it's obviously going to be a lot of people that aren't racist, that aren't white. You're going to have people from all walks of life, I suspect, attending this. So I'm just saying, from me to you is reconsider your stance on being disruptive on the day. Look, Israel and Gaza is a very complex, messy, and extremely tragic. But let's look, for me, let's focus on healing our nation. Let's focus on Australia and calling out what's wrong with our country at the moment, and it isn't racism. And as much as what's happening there, and it's horrific in Israel, between Israel and Gaza. Let's try and find ways not to make Australia like the Middle East. Is kind of what I'm saying in the close. But also, just to close, I love Australia, and we should all be fighting for Australia. And as I said, I don't want Australia to turn into the Middle East. If you're going to go, I've seen debates and discussions online about flags. If you want to bring the blue or red ensign, who cares? As long as you show up with an Australian flag, you turn up, you show it, you wave it proudly, and even if you turn up with no flag or whatever, and you join the march just to be there. You know, and just show your solidarity with our push against government and bureaucratic ineptitude. And as far as I'm concerned, God bless Australia. And I'm sorry if that offends you, because you know, I am a Christian. But I'm going to read this to you again. And Australia still has a constitution. Chapter 12, an act to constitute the Commonwealth of Australia. 9th of July 1900, whereas the people of New South Wales, Victoria, South Australia, Queensland and Tasmania, humbly relying on the blessing of Almighty God, have agreed to unite in one indissoluble federal commonwealth under the Crown of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland, and under the Constitution hereby established. So that is ultimately where it sits. We have a constitution that is in our constitution. If people don't like it, you can make moves towards changing our constitution democratically by a popular vote of a majority of Australians. You can change, you can put petitions in to change that. But as it stands now, we have voted upon flags, we have a constitution. I'm attending the march on the 31st because I love this country, and it's not about racism. I just believe that our government, our bureaucrats, and nefarious international actors are undermining this great nation. And in saying that, I also believe that there's certain elements on the far right, call them, whether it's the views of the ASN or others, whether it's the view of the 7 groups involved in the counter rallies, I believe are not helping the healing of our nation. And if you're fully aware of the stuff that's happening by the internationalists, you will start working together and start looking at ways to unite. If you do not, if you continue to do this undermining, then I will see you. I just look at you as an enemy of Australia and a threat to this nation, and will continue to call you out. But anyway, that's it for me. And at the end of the day, I'm going to finish off now with a song, another little tune from someone I've been sharing from Holy Groove, their YouTube channel there. I'm not affiliated. I'm not receiving any money. I just happen to like a bit of the Christian blues. So I'm going to finish off with a song there. It's from Revelation 5, the Lion and the Lamb. So I'm going to play that for you now in closing. So hope you enjoy. All right, all the best.
I saw a scroll in the Father's hand, sealed up tight by heaven's plan. No one above, on earth or below, could open it up or even know. Then I heard a voice say, "Don't you cry. The Lion of Judah has drawn nigh. He has conquered, he has bled. Now he stands where angels dread." Then I saw a lamb, scarred but alive, standing strong, glory revived. He took the scroll from the Holy One, and all creation broke into song. Worthy the Lamb who bore our shame, to take the scroll and break each chain. With his blood he bought the lost. Every tribe, every soul, no matter the cost. Then I heard a voice say, "Don't you cry. The Lion of Judah has drawn nigh. He has conquered, he has bled. Now he stands where angels dread." Him who sits upon the throne, and to the Lamb praise alone. Glory, honor, power, and grace, forever sung in time and space.